Matrix, Willie Miranda.
Nomar Slevik is a independent creator, writer, researcher, and investigator in numerous aspects of the paranormal. He delights in sharing stories through different mediums, such as books, documentaries, and podcasts. He has been fascinated by all things paranormal since childhood, beginning with a UFO encounter in Northern Maine at 4 years old. His life passion has been to research, investigate, write, share otherworldly events from everyday people in a manner that underscores their very human element in profoundly strange encounters. Nomar, welcome to Paradigm Matrix.
Willie, thank you so much for having me back. This has been a long time coming. I was on the
Yes,
show. I was on the old show years ago, so it's nice to connect and nice to be back on. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. You know, it's been, oh my God, I'm trying to think. I believe it was probably 2020, maybe the last time.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
Probably had the conversation.
Yeah. A lot's happened since then.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure that you have written a lot more books.
I have, yeah. Since then, I've written, I think, 3 more, maybe 4.
Wow.
Yeah, I think 4 actually. Yeah.
And you also did a documentary, correct?
I did, yeah. My last documentary, it came out in 2019, Otherworldly and More, which is still streaming exclusively on Paraflix Paranormal Plus. So if you have a subscription to that, people can check it out. But yeah.
At what point was it on Amazon?
Yeah, it was on Amazon for like its initial run. It was on Amazon for people to rent and stream and all that good stuff. And it got about 200,000 views on Amazon. It was wild. It did really well.
I remember.
Yeah, it did really well.
Yeah, I think that went pretty well. I think it was pretty successful as far as I'm concerned, as far as documentaries are concerned.
Yeah,
Especially local ones.
Yeah, like view count wise, yeah, it was great. Monetarily, not so much, but that's okay. But it's also part of why I haven't done another one since. To speak bluntly and a little casually, it's kind of a rich man's game, at least in my opinion. I don't have access to the equipment, and to get access to it, even just to rent it, can be expensive. And so it's without any sort of fundraising, it's hard for me to to do more projects like that. But I would love to do some more in the future, though.
Yes, these endeavors are not only time consuming, but financially can be a burden. It's tough. It's tough to bring this information out, and and I know that you and I are very passionate about what we do.
Yeah,
we still gotta have day jobs.
Yeah.
So I know that you have written a new book. And can you tell us about it?
Yeah, it's called In the Pines, True Stories of Mystery, Mayhem, and Monsters in Maine. And this is a book that kind of runs the whole gamut. We go from UFOs and cryptids to bizarre true crime, spontaneous human combustion, strange people. So it runs the gamut. It's not just a book on just cryptids or just UFO stuff. It runs the whole gamut. So I'm excited about it. It's, it just came out about a month ago, and, not doing too bad. And it's got a little bit of a twist in it that I haven't seen in too many books. I have QR codes in the after some stories, not every story, but after some of them, where you can see pictures of what I'm talking about, or you can see an original news article from what I talk about, or maybe there's a YouTube video, that shows some sort of supernatural event happening, that I just wrote about. So it becomes a little bit more interactive and gives you a little bit more info. When you're done reading a piece and there's a QR code, it kind of keeps the story going. And it can give you some visual aspects to what you were just reading.
Well, that's new and refreshing, to be honest. I mean, that's
Kind of fun.
well, it is. It is. It almost reminds me of American Stonehenge.
Oh,
When I would go up there, and he has those QR codes, and you take that self-guided tour.
yeah,
And you
yeah,
can point your phone, and it'll tell you a short information
yeah,
or about that area, specific area.
yeah.
So it's very popular. I'm surprised that it has come in that realm in books.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure I'm not the
In
only one doing
storytelling.
it, but this is my first time doing it, and people are really responding to it. When I get feedback about the book, they typically mention the QR codes, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool. I'm so glad I put them in there."
So interesting.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. As far as strange people that you mentioned in some of these stories, what have been some of these encounters?
Well, it's more so about maybe people that weren't the best kind of people. That's where part of the true crime part of it comes into. For example, there was a gentleman who was an aspiring actor that lived in Maine. And for his day job, he was actually a hypnotist. And he was helping people with like losing weight and to stop smoking and some other things like that. And these people brought them their daughter. She was young at the time. Excuse me. She was young at the time. I think she was, 12, 13 years old, and she was having an issue biting her nails. And so they wanted him to work with her to try to get her out of that habit. Well, as time went on and he had these meetings with her, it turns out he was abusing her. And he was using his hypnotism to make her forget about it and to not tell people about it. And but finally, it wasn't working anymore, and she decided finally, after years, to tell her parents. And she actually thought she was in love with him at one point, but she realizes it was just like his influence and his manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
So he was arrested, brought up on, they had a trial, and he was arrested and put in jail. The jury wasn't buying any of his, BS about that he was just trying to help her and that this stuff didn't happen. But they believed the girl, and he served time.
Hypnotism is such a powerful weapon.
It can be, yeah.
Yeah, it can be, especially with, that's why I'm pretty leery about being regressed.
Yeah.
And
the mind is very malleable and fallible, and I think it can be influenced. And so, I think I agree, with hypnotic regression. I think it can be a good tool to uncover some information, but I feel like it really depends on the person who's conducting the session, and to make sure they're not asking leading questions, and to make sure that they're not guiding the person to say what we want to hear. I think it's a slippery slope, and it can be done right. It has been done right, but it's been done wrong a whole bunch of times too.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And it gives that part of it gives it a bad name.
Yeah.
And then or a black eye.
Yeah. And this individual, with the young girl, like he definitely was giving it a bad name. It's not good. It's too bad.
Oh, thank God he's locked up and put away.
Yeah. Agreed.
So that's one that you cover in your book.
Yeah. The whole story's in there.
Okay. Now, as far as cryptids are concerned, have you mentioned any of those in your book?
Yeah. There's a section that covers, a lot of different types of creatures. One of the ones that I cover more recently are pale crawlers, which are reportedly these tall, really thin, very pale humanoid figures that kind of hide out, it seems, in the woods. And they're not necessarily, mean-spirited or anything. They almost seem curious from at least the encounters that I've come across, where they're usually like peeking at people, like, from behind trees, or somebody might be on their back porch smoking and they're at the tree line kind of watching the person, and sometimes they'll step out into the open. And so people have been encountering these things, and, nothing really happens other than, well, that was friggin' weird, and the thing ran off, or the person ran off, and, there's not a whole lot to the encounters, other than like, whoa, what is that, But they seem to really stand out in the night when the moon is out because of how pale their skin is. They almost glow because they're so pale.
No, that's so interesting, especially when you say that some of the people, when they have this encounter, they just, it seems like, well, that was weird, and
Yeah.
okay. It's almost the same as the experience that I had in Puerto Rico. It just it froze me for a few seconds, and I wasn't scared or anything, and I just turned away, and okay, that was weird, and off I went.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's what do you think? What do you think goes on there? That the person wasn't scared, or
I think it's more so like the reality of encounters. I think movies really exaggerate what happens, and skews people's perspective. But when you're in a real life scenario, at least in my experience, because that's all I can speak to, you don't like see a ghost or see a UFO and go, oh, there's a ghost, holy crap, or oh my God, there's a UFO. For me, it's kind of like you think there's something wrong with your eyes, and you're rubbing your eyes, and you're like, what the hell am I looking at? What is that? And your mind is trying to make sense of it. So you're not always immediately scared. You're mostly trying to figure it out. And while your brain is trying to make sense of it, the event might be over, like the
yes.
UFO flies away, or the pale crawler runs away, or the Bigfoot runs away, or whatever. So you're kind of left confused and what the hell just happened kind of feeling. It's not always scared and you're recognizing exactly what's happening. I'm sure that does happen, but more often than not, you're just like, what the hell was that?
Yes. As far as these pale figures are concerned, is this a new phenomenon, or is it something that you have had reports of for several years now?
Yeah, I've had reports of it for several years, and a lot of researchers have. It's really become more known, like in mainstream paranormal enthusiasts, if you will. It's come to the forefront a bit more. But they have been around for years. I have reports that go back, to the 80s, and so people have been seeing these things for quite some time. It could even be said that the Dover demon, that happened back in 77, I believe, in Massachusetts, it kind of sounds like a pale crawler. It also kind of sounds like a gray alien, the Dover demon, because pale crawlers are typically reported much taller than the Dover demon was, because the Dover demon was reported to be 3 or 4 feet tall. But it does have a likeness to pale crawlers. So who knows how far back they go.
No, I know you're familiar with the Bridgewater Triangle also. And you think there was any reports of that also, of those encounters emanating from that area?
In the Bridgewater, I don't know a specific story, but I would have to imagine that there's probably some. There's a book out by a buddy of mine. His name is Nate Brislin, and he's out of Southern Maine, and he wrote a book called Crawlers, and it's a whole case book on numerous pale crawler incidents, and there may be something from that area. So I definitely recommend people to check it out. You can get it on Amazon, but it's a great read. It's a great case book, and there's, 30, 40 encounters in there. And some of them are very, very detailed. So if I was going to like do some research on it, I would go to that crawler's book, to see if there was one from the Triangle in there, because there probably is, but I don't know that for a fact.
As far as the crawlers are concerned, is there specific regions in Maine that you have
No,
gotten reports?
no,
No?
it's all over. Like it's been like on the coast, and it's been in the western woods, so it literally runs the gamut. It's been all
Yeah.
over. Very similar to Bigfoot. Our Bigfoot sightings go from the coast all the way to the mountains.
Oh, wow. Interesting enough, I don't think people realize that vacation land, as Maine is known for,
Yeah.
is predominantly a lot of forest land.
Yeah, it's very forested. I mean, it's like 90% forested. Maybe 85% now, but yeah, it's heavily
It's
forested.
still a lot.
Yeah, and we have thousands of miles of coastline as well.
Yes.
So we go from water to the woods to the mountains.
As far as Bigfoot is concerned,
Yeah,
you've been still getting some reports,
yeah,
that
yeah.
run by in front of you.
Yeah, reports come in like all the time. People can always check the BFRO online to see all the reports that come through. But yeah, there's tons of modern day encounters. I typically, if I get something new and somebody should be interviewed, I usually send the reports to Michelle Sawyer, who's down in Southern Maine, and she's kind of taken up the mantle from Lauren Coleman to investigate these newer Sasquatch reports. There's some other people in the state too that do it as well, but when I get something, I send it to Michelle for her to investigate. Or if I have my own encounter, I've had a couple of my own things happen, and I've sent it to her, just to make sure she has everything.
Oh, I'd like to hear some of those.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd like to hear some of those. But I
Yeah.
do know that Maine's still predominantly a logging state, also, correct? So there is there still a logging industry?
There is, but it's definitely not as big as it used to be. It's certainly scaled back quite a ways. So I wouldn't call it that it's that predominantly, but it's still a factor in rural Maine, sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. And in circling back to the encounters, what encounters have you had that have been pretty strange as far as
Yeah.
Bigfoot is concerned?
Yeah, Bigfoot related. I actually have three different encounters, and they're not what you think. They're all kind of different. So the first one, very quick, very short and sweet. I found a footprint, and
Okay.
it was in this area that's kind of remote. It's just on the outskirts of town, down this dirt road, and I use this dirt road to ride my bike. It goes on for, I think, 2.5, 3 miles. And, once you go down there and turn around and come back, and then I go in town, I can get a good 8, 10 miles out of that whole round trip. But I was down there, and I wasn't very far down this dirt road, but I had gotten off my bike. I had to use the restroom and, stepped off into the tree line. And when I stepped back into this little area where I had parked my bike, I saw this large barefoot footprint. I was like, whoa, what the hell is that? And for a point of reference, I think there was like a discarded soda can or something, and I put that next to it, and I took a picture of it, and I sent it off to Michelle, and was like, well, here's what I found. It was just the one. And a footprint is cool, but it wasn't fresh. It didn't look like a perfect foot by any means, but if I had the materials with me, I would have cast it. That's how much it did look like a foot. But I sent it off to her so she could have it in her files, and that was pretty much the end of it. I actually go to that area quite a bit, pretty often, to ride my bike, and I always check now to see if there's any fresh footprints, and I haven't found one since. I think I found that one 2 years ago, maybe.
Okay.
Another encounter that was a little bit more esoteric, if you will. I was in Acadia National Park, which is the national park up here in Maine, very popular. Millions of tourists go through it every year. And there's a section of it called the carriage roads. And it's very much what it sounds like. These were roads that were built back in the day by the gentleman who made Acadia National Park. And he constructed all these roads in there so people who were disabled or who were older and sick could ride in carriages pulled by horses and still enjoy nature. And of course, anybody else could walk the carriage roads too if they wanted to. So those roads are still maintained to this day. And there's about 45 miles or so of road, going all through Acadia National Park. So I was in this area that is a little bit more remote, and it was a little bit later in the afternoon. It was about 4:30-ish, and it was kind of an overcast day. And I'm riding my bike, and I'm all by myself. I haven't seen anybody in like a half hour. And I'm about to go around this really long turn, this really long bend in the road. And as I'm approaching this bend and I'm about to go around it, something stops me in my tracks. I'm getting goosebumps now talking about it. But in my head, it was almost like this thing was projected into my head that there was a monster standing in the middle of the road around the bend. And if I continued, I was going to confront it and it wouldn't end well. This is like the imagery I'm getting in my head. So I've stopped my bike, and I've stepped off of it. Like I have one foot on the ground, another foot on the pedal. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, should I keep going? What is the, why is this thought in my head? Cause I don't get thoughts like that typically, I'm like, this is weird. And I was like, I'm not going to chance it. And I turned the bike around.
Do you think it was premonition, or you think it was a thought projection?
In talking it over with a few different people, I feel like it was a thought projection.
Okay.
And I felt that at the time as well, but of course, it wasn't as concrete as the way I'm thinking or talking now. Because in the moment, I'm like, what the hell's going on? Like, did that just get beamed into my head? Like, what is that? But I was like, I'm not going to chance it. I know I'm a researcher, but all I have on me is my bike. I have no way to protect myself. So I'm going to turn around. And I decided to. And so I don't know what was around that bend. I just know that there was no other people around and I was scared. So I turned around. I decided on better safe than sorry. So, and I'm okay with that.
No, of course. I've had to advise my son on one of these spontaneous times where he wants to go hiking in the woods at night with his friends.
Oh, geez. Yep.
And I've told him, hey, listen, stop. Go get your weapon.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're going to encounter at night. It's pitch dark out there.
Yep.
Of course, you're very aware of the books from David Paulides.
Oh, yeah.
Missing 411 and the things that happen in the woods.
Yeah.
Yeah. You hear those old tales about from centuries ago. Don't go out at night in the woods.
Yeah. Yeah, strange stuff happens in the woods at night. So
correct.
It's better to be safe. So
correct.
I wasn't prepared, so I turned around. But I do have a third incident. So I was in Acadia National Park again. This was probably a year later after the other thing around the bend. Mm-hmm. So about a year later, I'm in Acadia National Park, but I'm in a completely different section. I'm actually up on a mountain, and it's really cool. You can ride these carriage roads up a mountain, and it's done so gradually that it's not like this massive effort on a bike. It's certainly an effort, don't get me wrong. Sometimes there's mile-long inclines, and you get pretty tired once you get to the top, but they're doable. And I had reached this plateau where I was, on this side of this mountain on the carriage roads, and it had finally flattened out. And And I finally stopped my bike, just to like take a breather and take a drink of water and all that stuff and kind of check out where I'm at, because it had a nice view and everything. But it was woods on either side of me, but one side was mountain and woods, the rest of the mountain going up. And the other side was woods, but it was also a ledge, and you can kind of see through the trees and see the water and stuff. So I'm standing there. I'm still on my bike. I've got one foot on the dirt. I've got another foot on a pedal, and I'm just kind of sitting there looking around. And out of nowhere, right behind me, it felt like it was right on my neck. I heard a whoop, just a one whoop sound. And it was a little bit deeper than that, a little bit louder than that. I never do it justice. And it immediately made me flinch, and I turn around and there's nothing there. But it sounded like it was right behind me. But again, I was really close to the woods, so maybe it was in the woods and the wind carried it. I don't know. I don't know what the hell it was, but there was nothing moving. I heard no crunching, in the woods. There was literally nothing behind me, but it felt like it was right here. And it was that whoop. And it freaked me out. And once I got, because there's no like cell phone reception up there. And so like when I got back to my car and there was finally cell phone reception, first of all, I took pictures while I was up there just to show where I was. And then I sent all the information to Michelle. I'm like, I don't know what this was, but I heard a whooping sound. And I mean, it could have, porcupines make really interesting noises, and we have lots of those here in Maine. So, she suggested it could have been a porcupine, it could have been a moose, or, it could have been a Sasquatch. I don't know. So I can't say that was an actual Bigfoot encounter, but it was friggin' weird.
And two of those stories are in the national park, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So it comes to, it's my curiosity again, and probably yours, and we go back to those missing 411,
Yeah,
which a
sure.
lot of them are in national parks.
Yeah.
I believe the rest are compiled in a certain age group.
Okay.
And I was talking to a good friend of mine who I'm going to have on the show, who's a retired police detective, locally here, and he still works a lot of cold cases.
Oh, cool.
And we were going over last week. I met him up for coffee, and we were going over some of these cases and talking about them. And of course, he's told me, yeah, there is that certain age group, but there are some serial killers out there also that haven't made the headlines, and I guess the FBI just try to really pinpoint where these murders are happening or disappearances. They keep it on the low,
Yeah.
while they try to map these areas out.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that the national parks are anything like that. I think the national parks are very unique,
Oh, sure.
just because of how big they are.
Yeah.
Arcadia is probably one of the smallest.
It
Correct?
is. Yeah. It's pretty small comparatively.
Yeah. And nationally, I think is one of the newest too. Correct? I think it's one of the last.
I don't know that information. I probably should, but I don't.
Yeah, I think it probably is. I think it's at least it's up there. You know what I mean? It's as far as I know it's a beautiful area.
Yeah.
And I definitely like to go up there to see one of those sunrises.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I
Pretty
mean?
amazing. Yeah. I've seen
I'm pretty
many.
sure.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. As far as the whooping sound, that's always associated with Bigfoot.
Yeah.
The whoops, anything like that is it's associated with Bigfoot. And I think the researcher in you probably said, you know what, this is it for me. I'm going to turn around and call it
Yeah. I'm good.
wrap it all up
Yeah.
and head back into the car. As to other people, I think some people would be just so curious, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
that they would try to follow that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
and probably end up getting lost.
Potentially, but just being up there, because it was in the middle of the day, it wasn't overcast, it was very bright and sunny, so it wasn't as scary as the other like thought projection thing, but it was startling. And it the real freaky part of it was that it sounded like it was like right here, like I didn't feel the breath or anything, but that's how close it was. And to the point where it made me flinch, and I like immediately turned around, and to not see anything was really like, it was weird. It felt weird, but I didn't hightail it out of there. I got off my bike. I was taking pictures. I was looking in the woods. I was listening for anything out of the ordinary. And, I didn't, find anything or hear anything else. And, it was kind of like this weird one-off thing that happened. And, so at least on that one, I tried, my due diligence to document what I could and to see if there was, anything happening out of the ordinary. And I came up empty. But the strangeness of it really sat with me. And I felt it was noteworthy enough to send it to a Bigfoot researcher, just to make sure they had the story. Now, you mentioned serial killers before, and in the new book, In the Pines, I came across this story down in Kennebunk or Kennebunkport. I forget which one, but they're right next to each other. And this happened, maybe a decade ago. But this family from New York came up to have a Maine vacation, and they might have run into a serial killer and got away. But it's kind of a long drawn out story, but to give you like the crux of it, it was a woman and her 2 children, and dad was stuck at work in New York, and he was going to come up in a couple of days, but they wanted to drive up and have a nice drive. And I think he was going to fly. And so they have the long drive from New York up to Southern Maine, and they get to this, the little town of Kennebunk or Kennebunkport. And they get in kind of late, but they're all exhausted, but they're starving. So they go to a restaurant that's still open, and they order their seafood meals, and everyone's happy about that. And they also set up to rent this little Airbnb. And come to find out, the owners weren't available for the Airbnb, and they were kind of scrambling at dinner to find a new place to stay for the night. And so she's on the phone with her husband, and he's on the phone trying to call hotels in the area to see if he can get them a room, and everybody's booked up and they're having a hard time. And this man who was sitting at the next table over by himself, overheard the conversation and came over and approached the family and said, I have a big house, and my wife is there, and we're renovating the home that we own behind it. It's like a guest house, and you're welcome to stay at the guest house for the night. And the mom thought it was like way too generous, and but was like, but the man was really charming. And so she's actively on the phone with her husband saying, hey, this guy is saying we could stay at his, thing. And, his wife will be there and all that good stuff. And the husband was, thinking it over. And so they talked about it for a little bit. And then the woman decided to talk to the man, to have a conversation with him. And it turns out they're in the same line of business. She was in finance, he's in finance. And they were sparking like a really nice little conversation. And the kids kind of seemed okay with everything. And then after talking with her husband again, they all agreed for one night, okay, let's go stay at this stranger's house or this guest house behind their house. So they all leave, and, the woman is following the man to this house, and they pull up to this gate, like it's a gated house. And, the gate opens, and they both drive in, but the house is completely dark. And so she thought that was weird. If the wife is home, why is the house completely dark? But he instructs them to park around back, because that's where the guest house is. And, he shows them the guest house, turns on the lights and all that stuff, and, bids them a good night. And she's like, okay, thanks. And so now it's the woman and 2 children, and they're looking at this house, and they're in this house is kind of like one big bedroom, if you will. And the beds are oddly placed right under the windows. It just didn't seem like it in her opinion, it didn't seem like it was spaced out correctly. She thought it was weird that each bed was under a window, but she's like, well, whatever, it's one night, so they're kind of like, brushing their teeth and getting ready for bed. And then there's a knock on the door and it's the guy. And so the woman's like, yeah. And he's like, oh, I'm just, checking in and making sure you guys are okay. And, making sure, you're settling in all right. She's like, yep, we're good. Thanks. And he's like, okay, all right. If you need anything, you just let me know. And she's like, okay, thank you. Like you can go now. So he leaves and now they're like just getting in bed, like another 20 minutes goes by and they're finally like all kind of settling down, getting in bed. And there's another knock on the door. And mom was like, what the hell? So she opens the door just a crack and it's the guy again. He's like, hey, I'm just, making sure you guys are good. And she's like, yes, we're fine. We're going to go to bed now. We're all set. And when she got that tone with him, something switched in him. And she said that it looked like he was talking with, like holding back his anger. He's like, okay, I'm glad everyone's okay, and was being a little bit more aggressive and it freaked her out. So she's like, okay, good night. If we need anything, we'll let you know. And she just closed the door on him. She didn't even like wait to, hear anything or whatever. She just closed the door on him and locked the door. So the kids are like, well, who was that? She's like, oh, it was just the guy. He was, checking in on us and everything. And so they're like, okay, he's checked in again. So they were all kind of feeling weird about it. But she's like, hey, it's just one night. It's late. We'll get up early. We'll get out of here. So they're all lying in bed. No one's sleeping. They're kind of talking, but it's all dark. There's no curtains. There's no blinds. So they're sleeping in these beds right up against a window that's at their head. And there's nothing, to block out the windows. And it's, kind of freaking the kids out. But, mom's talking to him, trying to keep everyone chill. And the girl, her daughter, which was, I think she was 14 at the time, she kind of leans up on her elbow and because she heard something outside the window. And she leans up on her elbow and looks out and her eyes get really big. And she sees a man standing outside her window. And so she looks at her mom, who's like kind of across the way from her. And her mom is already sitting up in bed and watching the guy. Mom saw the guy first. And so they're looking and she's like, can you see who it is? And mom's like, they're trying to speak really quietly. She's like, I think it's the guy. I think it's the guy that invited us over here. So she goes, that's it. She got up, flicked on the light. The guy went running. She flicked on the light. They all packed their shit and they got out of there as fast as possible. So they get in the car and she's talking to her husband on the phone. She's like, I don't know what's happening, but we're all freaked out. I think some guy was watching us through the window and he's like, just get out of there. And she's like, well, there's a gate to the property and it's locked. And he's like, I don't care. Bust through it. And she's like, okay. So she backs up and rams her SUV through this gate and breaks it open and drives all the way back to New York that night. So they get home, they explain everything, to the husband and all that stuff. And, the kids were young, so they weren't explaining everything to them. But years later, the daughter, who's an adult now, was talking to her parents about that crazy drive to Maine when there was a guy watching them. And the parents told her that they found out that house had been empty and the person who brought them there didn't own that house or anything, that he had lured them there and that they were lucky to get away. But they didn't give any names for, like who this person was or, how he was going to hurt them. But in my mind, I read it like a potential serial killer. So I started doing some research to see if there was any active serial killers in the area during that time frame. And there was. And it might have been this guy. It's kind of a really long story with names and stuff, and I don't have all the info in front of me right now, but finding this potential serial killer who was close to the area and active at the time, it could have been the same guy. I'm not saying it is, but it could have been. And I think these people got away with their lives,
Oh, I'm pretty sure they did too.
It's pretty wild.
I'm pretty sure they did.
Yeah.
and it says a lot about our intuitions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've always said, if it doesn't feel right,
Yeah, and it sounded like mom was going against her better judgment, and so was dad, and he
Yeah,
wasn't there, and he was on the phone, and
of
but
course.
they needed a place to stay, and and
Yeah.
lesson learned.
We're talking about Maine too.
Yeah,
Maine is not known for that.
yeah, yeah. A New Yorker would feel safe
Yeah,
up here. You know what I mean?
correct,
So
correct, correct.
yeah,
So, are you still working on that? Is it one that you got in the back burner? You know what I mean? Like,
that one's in the book. I got the whole story in the book.
really
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, so it goes into a lot of detail that I didn't bring up here, but yeah,
Oh, fantastic.
yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great. As far as uh, unusual uh, UFO encounters, which ones have stuck out to you? Ones in Maine in particular.
Yeah, there's a lot of strange ones. I found one that took place at a school in the 1960s. It was during the day. The entire class saw this UFO. So did the teacher. And the principal got involved and interviewed all the kids. And he was so convinced that they saw something that he called the newspaper and asked if anybody else had reported UFOs. And it turned out somebody did. And they actually sent a reporter to the school to get the kid's story, and they took pictures of the kids, and the kids like drew what the UFO looked like on the chalkboard, and had their picture taken next to it. But it started off with this kid. It was about 9 a.m. and this kid, his name was Paul, and he's in class, and the teacher's giving a lesson, and he hears a beeping sound coming from outside. And he's like, what the hell is that? He got really distracted from it. So he gets up in the middle of a lesson and goes to look out the window because he can hear that it's coming from outside. And the teacher's like, what are you doing? Like, we're in the middle of a lesson here. And he's like, well, there's a weird beeping sound coming from outside. So he goes and looks, and they're on the second floor of this school. And he can see this black dot in the sky outside, and it's getting bigger. Well, it turns out it was something getting closer. And as he's looking at this thing, he gasps as it's getting closer. And so that prompted the whole class to like get up and run towards the window to see what was going on. And as they're standing there and the teacher's behind them looking out the window, they see this oval shaped silver craft go by the window, and underneath it was like this black portion of the ship, and that's what they were seeing. That's what the kid was seeing way out, but before it was really close. And it also had like this antenna thing sticking out of the front of it, and it had a light on top of it, and it was blinking. And every time the light blinked, there was a beeping sound, and that's what the kid was hearing. So they watched this UFO go by the window, and it descended, and it seemed to land behind somebody's house not far from the school. So everybody's like, oh my God, like, can you believe that we saw that? So that's when the teacher goes and gets the principal. The principal actually sequesters all the kids, puts them in different rooms so he can talk to them all individually and get the story. And they all told him a very similar story of what I just told you. And then he had them all draw it on a chalkboard, and they did. And that's what he called the newspaper. And there was this gentleman who was in the next town over. He was a railroad worker, and he was outside, and he heard this beeping sound, and he looked up, and he saw, like, he described it as like the bottom of a teacup go by. And every like 2 minutes, he'd hear a beeping sound, and he'd look up, and he would see this teacup thing go by. And every time it went by, it was getting bigger, meaning it was lower. And that's what he reported to the newspaper. And so the newspaper people came over, and they interviewed the kids, and then they ran the story in the paper the next day. And but for some reason, the story died. They never contacted the police. Nothing was ever really done about it. The article in the paper, the article in the paper was next to another article about meteorites that people were seeing the night before. And I'm wondering if those two articles being close to each other, people are like, oh, that's what the kids saw or something, even though it's nothing like a meteorite. But so that was a strange one, and that happened in like 1965. And I didn't find that until like 2023. That's crazy.
Oh, wow. Now, do you ever think that one made it to Blue Book?
That one did not make it to Blue Book. Like it literally died. Like nobody contacted any sort of authority. It was just
Wow.
the newspaper and the principal, and that was it.
You know, Nomar too is thinking about it. There haven't been too many. There's probably a handful of school sightings like that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
There's
I
not too
think the one
many.
that comes to mind is the one in Africa,
Yeah, the aerial school.
South Africa, I think.
Yeah,
You know, where it landed and
there's the little
kids.
creature, and yeah, it's
Yes,
very strange. Yeah,
yeah, yes. So you know, it's I wouldn't say it's odd, but it's one of these stories that, like you say, that they probably said, you know, good thing that you know, we just buried it. You know, no follow up, no
yeah,
nothing. You
yeah,
know, the oddest thing is just one kid in the classroom also heard the beeping noise, correct?
yeah,
Or the beeping sound,
yeah,
and one adult, I guess, who was outside.
yeah. And the adult outside. Yeah,
You know, and nobody else heard this beeping noise.
yeah.
No
The other
follow-up.
kids started to hear it once it was closer. You know
Uh-huh.
why he heard it when it was so far away? I have no idea. You know.
Again, you know, sometimes these things just tailor to one individual.
Very true.
You know,
Very true.
and in kids too. I mean, with kids, with my experience was I happened to find out that back in the early 70s, there was a flap around the area where I had my encounter, and at the time, only they were getting reports of children seeing these creatures, you know, which at the time they didn't have a name. And eventually in the 80s, it was called, the name that was given to them was the chupacabra.
Oh, okay.
So,
Very familiar.
yeah, so but back in the early 70s in Puerto Rico, there was a lot of reports of kids seeing these creatures, but the adults couldn't see anything. The
Interesting.
children would say, there's
Yeah.
something there, there's a creature there, I see it. You know, whether it be in town, whether it be in the woods, okay? So in rural areas, you know, in the rainforest, okay, they would get these reports also. So interesting enough, you know, with the child's mind, you know, being not preoccupied with everything else, and as those adults
Yeah.
would be, how would you say, the corrupted,
Right.
let's say, you know,
No longer innocent.
correct, correct. Now, as far as triangles are concerned, you've had your fair share of reports,
Yeah.
or have heard of reports of many triangles, triangle-shaped crafts in Maine, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. There was there was a story of these two kids who like to fish for eel at night, and they would try to sell them, you know, during the day. And these two kids were eel fishing on one evening, and I think it was close to midnight or so. And they heard this whooshing sort of sound above them, and when they looked up, they said it was like this huge triangle, and there was a light in the center, and there was a light at each point, you know, so they could see the three lights and then one in the center. And they said it was really like tall as well. And, you know, they saw it, it was slowly gliding over them, and they watched it until it went out of sight. You know, it's not like it shot off or, you know, anything crazy. But all these years later, a lot of people are wondering if they saw a TR3B triangle. And, you know, the way that they described it, it certainly kind of sounds like one, you know. Really interesting, though.
Yeah, that thought came to my mind also.
Yeah.
You know, I believe is in Belgium, where they have one of those flaps
Yeah.
also.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, right behind me,
Oh, yeah. I see it. Yeah.
I got those from Mark D'Antonio,
Oh, cool.
and it's got that exact one right there.
That's awesome.
You know, it's like a little model.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very interesting. I did have a illustrated photo of that particular, but it's exactly the way you describe it, with the red light in the middle
Hmm.
and the lights on
on each
every
corner.
corner.
Yeah.
Yes, and the TRB3, I believe it is, or
TR3B, something like that.
yeah, it's an experimental craft, I believe. That's
Yeah,
anti-gravity.
that's what they say. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's probably what they say is one of these reverse engineered,
Right.
or sometimes I think it's a little bit of our own work.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. And they also talk about the TR3Bs being a part of the, which I'm not sure I buy into 100%, but the whole like mission to Mars stuff that people say like there were soldiers on Mars or
or the super soldier
yeah,
program and
yeah.
all that stuff,
And I
and
think they said that.
which is something that I believe in court was really that particular person was he had to admit that it was all a lie.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think me and you know who we're talking about.
Yeah,
This particular person, but fortunately there are those charlatans out there,
yeah,
who are really, I believe, make it really hard for investigators and researchers like yourself and authors, who are putting these stories together.
yeah,
And again, they end up giving a black eye
yeah,
to the field.
yeah,
You know what I mean? It's unfortunate. I believe you and I are familiar with Commander Cobra,
yeah,
and of course I know that in some of his shows they were mentioned there was like a corridor, for that. I believe it was for the Aurora,
yeah,
the aircraft. It would fly out of England and make its way, fly over Greenland and make its way down the eastern seaboard. That corridor. And it's funny because I know that in the Hudson Valley area in New York, they've had the same sightings.
yeah. They have. Yeah, there's a big
You know,
big flap there too.
Yeah, particularly with these triangles.
Yeah,
I had a co-worker that was telling me, like in the 60s, he had an encounter with a triangle.
oh wow.
Yeah, we're talking about the 60s, like 65 maybe,
Yeah,
middle 60s. He said he was in these parent station wagon. They were in, I believe it's in Route 1A or 2A, and maybe Westminster here in Mass. And the mother saw something in the sky. She says, "Honey, what's that?" And he looked, and he stops, and he says, "Stay here." And he opened the door, and the way that my coworker was describing it to me, he says he was in the middle seat. So he was in the middle. So station wagon's packed. He's in the middle, and his father gets off, looks directly up, and he just stands there. And the kid's curious to see what is it. So he moved to go outside, and he took a peek, and he says he sees this giant triangle.
wow.
No noise, nothing, just hovering there. And he says his father just shoved his head back into the car, just shoved it right back in.
Yeah,
And that was it. He says he got on the car and put it in drive
jeez.
and took off. He said it was the oddest thing. He never forgot it. But they never spoke about it or nothing.
Yeah,
Like you said, it's one of these things where you have these encounters and you don't know how you're going to react. We always say, "Oh, I would react this way.
yeah.
I would react that way."
Yeah, but you don't know.
You don't know. And, and when you're there, it's like your head saying, like you just said, your mind doesn't register. What am I looking at?
Yeah, yeah,
What am I seeing?
yeah.
Is this for real?
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes the unknown is just scary. So you might be scared, like, what the hell is that? But other times you're just like confused, like, what am I looking at here? This is weird. Surely this is something that I recognize, but your brain can't make sense of it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Have you had any reports in New York?
York specifically, I don't think so. Right in surrounding areas, though, there's a crazy story from Agunquit, which is right next to
Right
York.
next to it. Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, in Wells, I have a couple of stories, but York specifically, I don't think I do.
I know if I told you I had a sighting in York.
I think you mentioned
was-
that. Yeah. What's the story with
Yeah.
that?
And it was odd because I was just telling it to Fred also. Fred Richards, who I had on my inaugural
Yeah.
episode.
Shout out to Fred. Love you, Fred.
A great guy.
Yeah.
Great
It's
guy.
good people.
And, and one of my first things was, as soon as I get home, I'm going to contact Fred, of course, state director for MUFON.
Yeah.
And, he's a straight shooter. And I just said, I'm going to tell him about my sighting. It was odd. I was up in York, Maine, of course, is one of my favorite spots. And I was staying not too far from the Noble Lighthouse. So I walked down. It was probably, I would say, like 7 or 8 o'clock at night. The sun had just gone down, and just wanted to take a walk down to Short Sands. And that's the area where it's a very small stretch of beach there.
Yeah.
Okay, and the waves are calm, and it's very popular with families because they take their kids there, and they're able to play and everything else. And there's like a small boardwalk there, and then you got your shops that sell all the saltwater taffy
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the ice cream shops, all the pretty places there, And at night, the place is pretty live, There's a lot of people out there, taking the night in, And it happened to be very misty, it was very misty that night, and it was kind of high tide, okay? So the waves are coming in and the ocean's starting to stir up,
Mm-hmm.
and just walking, I decided to look up because I'm always looking up anyway.
Yeah.
I look up and I see this light. It's an orange light. And I go, wow, that's odd. Because it just stood there. And I'm looking at it. I'm going, oh, wow. Doesn't move, no noise. So I turn around to my wife and I go, you see that? Just want to make sure that. She goes, oh, yeah. Weird, isn't it? Because I don't see it moving. And she doesn't pay attention.
Yeah.
So I'm looking up. And we stood there and I'm looking at it. And she started looking at it. And all of a sudden, I see a green light right next to the orange light.
Oh, wow.
And that's what I said. Oh, wow, interesting. And then another one came on. And then another one. And it started doing like a round silhouette.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't see anything. All I could see is the light. It's misty. And it's got that silhouette. Like I'm not trying to put two and two together, but in my mind, that's what it's looking like.
Yeah.
And again, it's light.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to make anything more out of it. The oddest thing was that it was very windy. Now, at the time, during the day, I seen some kids with drones, little camera drones,
Yeah.
and they couldn't control them.
Yeah.
They could not control them, okay? Basically because, the winds, but again, I'm looking and I'm thinking, it's not a helicopter because I can't hear anything. Like, I just can't hear the blades. Like, I hear everything else. And then I'm standing there, just like almost it just started disappearing. It just started getting dimmer and dimmer, and that was it.
Wow.
It was gone.
I mean, and quite literally an unidentified flying object,
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
But again, I got no idea what I saw.
Yeah. Wow.
All I could see is that I saw these lights up there.
That's cool. That's a good sighting. That's pretty cool.
But of all the places,
Yeah.
of all the places,
Yeah.
I never thought I'd see something like that there.
Yeah.
And sometimes you could get it easily confused, because you have if you're far away enough, you're gonna see lights out there,
Mm-hmm.
and there's there's still fishing out there.
Yeah.
There's still the Coast Guard out there, or you see some container ships out there,
Sure.
way out there. You might see something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you see it during the day. It's but it was odd. It was very strange. And again, it's one of those things that are unexplained.
Yeah. Wow. That's a cool story. Thank you.
Oh, no. I mean, I wish I probably, if you could add it to your book, I would have.
Yeah.
I would have. If I would have known, that, I would have mentioned it to you. And at the time,
Yeah.
yeah, even.
Yeah. You're not thinking stuff like that.
As soon as I get back.
But I do have files that I keep, so I'm going to add it to that. And you never know what I'll do with those. So I will write that up and add it.
Now, your book.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get your links and everything else and put in the description for the show. But where can your books be purchased?
The books, you can get it. I do have it on my own website, which is square.slevik.com, something like that. But I'll send you the link for that. But also on Amazon. And if you just search for my name in Google, Nomar, Slevik, Nomar Slevik, you'll find all my stuff. You can also find all my stuff at this link called allmylinks.com/Slevik. But yeah, you can get my brand new book at Amazon or my own online store. If you order it from me, it'll come signed and you'll get a bookmark and all that cool stuff. But yeah, that's where you can get it.
Well, that's what I got to do. That's what I got to do. And let me tell you, I don't turn down an autographed book. For me, that's special.
Yeah.
When I get an autographed book by an author, it's a big deal for me.
Yeah, same. I collect them myself, so that's cool.
Yeah, usually what I do, I keep my autographed copy, and I never open them.
Oh.
And I keep another copy which I open and read.
Yeah. That's cool.
So those, I'll open them up and say, oh, they signed, and just they go in my special shelf.
That's cool.
Oh, it is. I mean, it's one of those things, that I really, it's a, like I said, it's a special, it's a memento for me to receive something like that. You know what I mean? I'm not, personalized autographed book. It's
For sure.
I don't think I'm pretty sure as an author yourself, it's something that you treasure.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have my own little collection of them, and that I definitely treasure.
Yep. Now, do you have any events coming up?
Yeah, I have a lot of stuff coming up this summer, but the very next thing is in 3 days on May 9th. I'm doing an in-store book signing at the Emporium Spooky Goods and More store in Bangor, Maine. It's at their brand new location. And I'll be there from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. signing my new book. And it's a great store. The owners, Nick and Katie, are amazing. And if you happen to be in the Bangor area, you should certainly stop by and come check it out at the Emporium Spooky Goods and More.
Awesome. That's excellent. Nomar, again, I'd like to thank you for your time.
Sure.
Take a little bit of your time to be on my show.
Absolutely.
And of course, you've been one of the guys that I truly admire, because I know the kind of work that you've been doing up there. There's not too many people up there in Maine who have been really taking an interest to write about a lot of these things.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And you're a friend from the past, Willie, and anytime you need me to come on, I'm there for you, buddy.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
And again, Norma, thank you so much for being my guest in the Paradigm Matrix.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, you take care.
All right. You too. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Welcome to the Paradigm Matrix with your host, Willie Miranda. has been the Paradigm Matrix hosted by Willie Miranda.